The thing I was looking forward to most with the latest expansion was all the new decks that would pop up. It's safe to say I am not disappointed one bit with the huge range of decks that have been generated as a result of the Shurima expansion. Now that patch 2.4 is here, there's a good chance to look back at the best new decks that popped up in patch 2.3, and these are going to form effectively the best new decks for patch 2.4 as well, as there's been no balance changes announced in the latest set patch notes. So very simply, this is best new decks patch 2.4. This video has been done in collaboration with BomberTV. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications too. So let's dive in. This is Kindred Nasus and features cards from Shurima and Shadow Isles. It's a control deck, and as you can see it has a large amount of cards costing 5 or more mana, which is very typical for control decks. It's actually quite an expensive deck as well, with 6 epic cards in total. The idea behind this deck is to control the board whilst activating Slay effects to take advantage of Kindred and to buff Nasus, and later on win with a big buffed up Nasus either by getting through or casting Atrocity on him. Nasus gains 1/1 for each unit you've slain this game and works well with Kindred, who obviously marks the weakest enemy each time you slay a unit for the first time in the round and kills a unit with his mark at round end. The Undying is a very neat card here, constantly growing and putting pressure on your opponent, forcing him to let you value trade or take damage, or letting him grow bigger and bigger, whilst also being the perfect target for sacrificial cards like Blighted Caretaker. This is obviously a very useful card here as well, and triggering up to 3 slays potentially in one turn thanks to the on-play kill and the trades from the saplings. You also have a lot of draw tools like Glimpse Beyond and Spirit Leech, both very useful for getting your important champion cards. Glimpse Beyond kills an ally to draw 2 cards, and Spirit Leech is a new card that kills an ally also to draw 2 cards. Overall, this is a very control oriented deck and can be quite tricky to master, but nevertheless it's a very solid one overall. You'll have a lot of fun if you can get a level 2 Nasus and level 2 Kindred in this game. To counter Kindred Nasus is actually quite tricky, and in general you want to run hard removal cards like Vengeance or the Runation, or maybe even silence cards like Hush. So if you want to be a little bit more specific, Frostbite is also quite good, as it's basically going to be a way of countering a Nasus that's obviously going to be hitting for big. Frostbite that Nasus and he's not going to be able to damage you. This is Azir Hecarim Ephemerals, and it features cards primarily from Shadow Isles, with some cards also from Shurima. It's a standard aggro mana costed deck with 20 cards costing 3 or less mana. It's actually a little bit expensive with 5 epic cards in total. The core idea behind this deck is to attack with lots of ephemeral cards and then hit your opponent with a leveled up Hecarim on turn 6, often resulting in you winning the game. This deck has so many ways of generating ephemeral cards, so you're not going to struggle to get a lot of them on the field. And a leveled up Hecarim gains the effect of granting all ephemeral cards 3 extra damage when he levels up when they attack, so you're going to have a big combo to finish. To achieve this, one of our key cards is Shark Chariot, constantly being resummoned attacking, and thus advancing the level of Hecarim even further. Hecarim obviously levels up when you attack with 7 ephemeral cards, which is going to be super easy in this deck. Another one of your key cards is Azir, always guaranteeing an ephemeral attacking champion in the form of Sand Soldiers. This works well with Shark Chariot, as he obviously arrives when you have an ephemeral card attacking, so you're going to be having a Sand Soldier and Shark Chariot most turns in an ideal world. Another very important card is Soul Shepherd. Not only does it give you more attack, putting more pressure on your opponent, but actually the most important thing is the health buff, meaning that your opponent can't simply just ping a small AoE card to counter all your weak ephemeral cards, and that's quite a big deal in this deck. Later on, finish the game with Hecarim. If your opponent is too resilient, you also have the Harrowing to put an end to the game. The Harrowing revives the strongest 6 allies that died this game and grants them ephemeral, meaning they will benefit from your ephemeral buffs cards in this deck too. So overall this is a very aggressive deck, almost totally kind of ignoring any form of defense, which obviously constantly you're going to be racing against your opponent to finish the game as quickly as possible. To counter Azir Ephemerals, you just play a bunch of AoEs like Avalanche or Ice Shard, and you should have a pretty easy time, and this is why decks play Soul Shepherd to protect the cards which would otherwise die really easily. So ephemeral cards typically have super low health, and cards like this just wipe them out. This is Sivir LeBlanc and features cards from Noxus and Shurima. It's quite spell heavy with 19 in total. This deck has no cards costing 5 or more mana, being in line with most aggressive decks. It's quite budget with 23 commons and 3 epic cards. The idea behind this deck is to activate Reputation as fast as possible whilst also trying to level up LeBlanc and Sivir. LeBlanc levels up when she sees you deal 15 damage, and Sivir levels up when you've dealt 35 damage altogether, so some similar themes here about all dealing damage. Reputation activates if allies have struck for 5+ damage on at least 4 occasions in the game, so it also helps lead to these level up in turn, so you can see the pattern here. This deck has followers with over 5 damage that can help lead to Reputation being activated. So early on you have Trefarian Gloryseeker, and later in the game you have the new Ruin Runner, which has Overwhelm and Spell Shield. You also have spells to help activate Reputation. You have the new Bloody Business, where an ally with 5+ damage strikes an enemy. Additionally, you have the new Spell Shaped Stone to help buff allies enough to be able to deal 5 damage. LeBlanc is very easy to remove, but against certain decks with no removal she can be very aggressive and later on generate more copies of herself, which in turn can be generating more copies, and you get the picture. Sivir on the other hand is much more solid with spell protection already built in and a keyword designed to be good on attack, making her one of the best aggressive champions out there. Later on she can be a game winning bomb by giving protection to your whole board and maybe giving them overwhelm to go in for the win. So overall this is a very interesting deck, aggressive with some extent for some combos. This is Noxus Shurima Aggro and features cards from both Noxus and Shurima. It's very aggressive with a huge 30 cards costing 3 or less mana. The champions in this deck are Azir, Draven and Darius, and it's very budget with 24 commons and only 1 epic card needed. This deck is just straight up aggro. We're running the best of the best aggressive units. So ideally you want to start the game with Legion Saboteur or the new Junekeeper. Legion Saboteur has 2 damage and deals 1 to enemy nexus on attack, and Junekeeper also has 2 damage on himself and summons a Sand Soldier on summon, and this could provide up to another 2 damage. Then follow up with Legion Grenadier, or double up on 1-drops. So Grenadier obviously has 3 damage and deals 1 on death to the opponent, so the trend must be quite apparent here. You're basically really just trying to chip away damage at your opponent's nexus. Getting Azir is crucial on turn 3 as it can put so much pressure on your opponent. Azir can keep obviously summoning Sand Soldiers who deal 1 damage to the enemy's nexus on attack, so just really good continued burn here. Shurima now shines bright with one of the best burn spells in the game, Ruinous Path. This obviously draws 1, and if you've slain a unit this round, drains 2 from the enemy nexus, so once again some fantastic value here to keep chipping away at the opposing nexus. Later on you have lots of burn cards, so think Decimate or Nox and Favor. Decimate deals 4 to the opposing nexus, and Nox and Favor deals 3 to an ally to deal 3 to anything. You can target the opponent's nexus with this too, so overall it really kind of contributes to a really aggressive deck, and even though it feels quite repetitive, you're going to be climbing the ranks quickly with this one. This is Azir Nasus Shadow Isles and features cards from both Shadow Isles and Shurima. The mana cost of the deck is extremely spread out with loads of cards costing low mana and high mana. It's also fairly budget with only 2 epic cards needed. The idea behind this deck is to be very aggressive early on, get a bunch of slays so that later on Nasus will be very big and you can end the game by casting Atrocity on him. Nasus gains 1/1 every time you slay a unit, killing an ally or enemy by using your cards via damage, strike or direct kill effects grant a kind of credit for slaying, so that's basically what you need to be looking out for in this deck. An Atrocity deals a unit's damage to anything including the enemy's nexus, so that's your overall game plan. To help us get to this almost win condition, we have loads of cards like Rite of Cooling or Glimpse Beyond, both of which help us get Nasus that we need for that big endgame finish. Rite of the Cooling kills an ally or destroys a mana gem to draw a champion, and Glimpse Beyond kills a unit to draw 2 cards. Both of these will get Nasus in your hand as soon as possible so you can start winning. We're also very aggressive and still synergizing well with the slay mechanic, for example, Blighted Caretaker or Rampaging Bacchae. Blighted Caretaker's saplings can slay cards, and Rampaging Baccheye's effect can simply help slay units himself. You also don't really need Atrocity to win the game as such, just a huge leveled up Nasus could be enough to win the game, if your opponent doesn't run hard removal, that is. When Nasus does level up, all enemies have -1. As you don't have the Sun Disc in this deck, you won't be reaching level 3 on him, so that's one thing to bear in mind. But overall, this is an aggressive deck with the possibility of a 1-turn kill through burn on Atrocity. This is Aggro Kalista Shurima and features cards from Shadow Isles primarily, with some good support from Shurima too. Like most aggro decks, most cards have a low average mana cost, with 25 costing 3 or less mana in this deck. It's actually really budget, with no epic cards needed and only 3 copies of Kalista, the only champion in this deck, so this is great for players with little wild cards. There's not much going on in this deck as such. It's very effectively just efficient units from both Shadow Isles and Shurima. You ideally want to start the board with a 1-drop such as Ravenous Butcher for an explosive start, and then follow up with the Cursed Keeper into Blighted Caretaker. The rest of the strategy is fairly standard for an aggressive Shadow Isles deck. Shurima shines with one of the best burn cards in the game, Ruinous Path, and this card draws 1 if you've slain a unit this round, and drains 2 from the enemy Nexus, so fantastic value here. You also have very efficient units such as Rampaging Baccheye and Baccheye Reaper. Rampaging Baccheye on play has the effect if you've slain 4+ units this game, an enemy and him strike each other, and Baccheye Reaper is 1 mana, fearsome, and gains 1 damage every time you slay a unit. It's crazy that it only costs 1 mana. Kalista does her usual job of putting pressure on your opponent early on and then generating value in even more pressure later on once she levels up, so overall this is a really aggressive deck, looking to deal lots of damage early on and ending the game with burn damage. This is Azir Lucian and it features cards from Demacia and Shurima. I've classed this deck as a mid-range even though it's quite aggressive and also has some combo potential. The average cost in the deck is more weighted towards low cost, with 16 cards costing 2 mana and 9 cards costing 1 mana. It's fairly budget with only 2 epic cards. This deck has a lot of things going on. The main idea is to take advantage of the when allies attack effect on both Azir and the Emperor's Dais to summon lots of sand soldiers and overwhelm your opponent with basically quite wide boards. As you can see on the screen, both cards have the effect to summon sand soldiers, so you can quickly sense the theme here. To achieve this pretty straightforward synergy, you can do it with scouts such as Grizzled Ranger. As a reminder for all new players, all your scout units can attack twice as long as your first attack is exclusively with scout only cards. Another attack-minded card is obviously Lucian, which has the rally effect that when a unit dies for the first time each round, rally means you gain an attack counter once again, and it obviously has this on his leveled up card. Lucian will almost always level up as you're going to summon lots of ephemeral sand soldiers, which almost always guarantee an additional attack thanks to Lucian. Ephemeral means a unit dies at the end of the round on its first strike, so a very nice little combo here. Another card which is very strong here is Inspiring Marshal, which can have a win condition on his own. He basically doubles the damage dealt by every sand soldier, which can you imagine is pretty strong considering how many you're going to summon depending on how many times you attack. So overall this is a very aggressive deck with some nice combo potentials, meant for competitive players which basically like skill based decks. A lot of players were super excited about the Emperor's deck on Azir at level 3, many others were excited about Azir and Ephemerals. The latter won the race of which deck would be the most competitive in the end, and BomberTV has a more in-depth analysis on his deck on his channel, so please check it out in the card above. And there we go guys, what do you think is the best new deck that's popped up in patch 2.3? I wonder if these decks will still be considered the best new decks by the end of patch 2.4. Maybe I'll have to do a video looking at that as the meta obviously continues to evolve. My personal favourite has been Lucian Azir, as I feel the kind of way you can just rally out of nowhere with surprise attacks, sand shoulders left, right and centre. It's just so much fun to play with. What do you think is the best new deck that popped up in Shurima expansion? I would love to hear in the comments. Up next, it's Top 10 Decks Patch 2.4, taking a look at the wide range of successful decks now that the Shurima meta has basically settled a little bit more than the last time we looked at the top 10 decks. The data presented here is analysed by BomberTV using MOBA analytics. He's a Masters tier player with a background in game theory and game design. He took the most winning archetypes into Master tier, excluding ones with small play rates, analysed their key properties on why they are so strong. Link to his channel is in a pinned comment and in the card above. I've recently set up an Instagram account, @LawGuides, and I'll be doing a giveaway shortly. Please follow this account for see posts about new videos, and will be in a chance of winning this giveaway. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on bell notifications too. See you next time, guys.